afternoon. Sorry, I'm lifting the tape up to try and get this to my mouth. So I can get shorter. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Hot Lunch. As the host, and many of us on the committee do host, we always feel a bit guilty for interrupting all the great conversation. This is such a part of what Hot Lunch is engaging with others, connecting with others, and then all of a sudden we come up and we interrupt you. So my apologies for that interruption, but for a good reason. We have a fantastic speaker today. My name is Andrew Parr. I'm the AVP of Student Housing and Community Services, and welcome you to this Hot Lunch. Just want to remind all of us that we are blessed to be working and living and playing on the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of the Musqueam people, and breaking bread together is something that Musqueam has done in time immemorial, and we're doing that today. As usual, a great turnout. All of these sell out. You are the lucky, the chosen few to get a ticket, and it's great to have you all here. And just say hello to those that are online as well. So there is a few, I think, on Zoom. I just want to take a minute to introduce, before I introduce our speaker, just to introduce the committee that makes all of this happen. There's a few of us here today. Eilish Courtney, Jen Liu is right up front here, Stacy, Nick Yee from HR, myself, is there anyone else? Henry here? Henry, welcome Henry. And Cheryl's not here, and it looks like Shirley Nakata is not here as well, but that makes up the committee, and we have great fun working together, thinking about how we can continue to improve Hot Lunch, making sure we have fantastic speakers like Tony joining us, and it's a really fun group to be a part of. Just share, before I introduce Tony, I just wanted to share the format. So Tony will come up and share some of his wisdom and words with us for about 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to go straight into Q&A. So if there's some papers and pencils on your table. If you have any questions you want asked, you can write those down and we'll gather them. Or feel free also during the Q&A just to throw up your hand and we can do it live as well. And we also have a few questions that were sent in during registration as well. And just a quick reminder also that as we go to Q&A, if you need to leave to go back to work, don't be afraid to get up and sneak out during that hot lunch. I won't be offended. Tony might be, but that's you know. Okay, now let me share a little bit about my good colleague Tony. Tony Botelho is the managing director of the UBC Career Centre and has served in leadership roles in post-secondary career development and cooperative education for close to 25 years. He looks like he's 25 years old. So he joined us from SFU. Yay, UBC! What was it, about a year and a half ago or so, Tony? The team he has led, or the teams he has led over the years, have been recognized in Canada for innovation and service excellence. And Tony has received multiple well-deserved awards for leadership in the Canadian career development space. He tells me one of the awards that he's received and particularly proud of is his second grade teacher once said he was a pleasure to have in his classroom. And maybe I'll echo that sentiment today to say that Tony is a pleasure to have as a colleague of mine in the Vice President Students portfolio, an excellent addition to our VPS leadership team. And finally, Tony is a BC boy. He was born and raised on the North Coast in a small town called Kitimat. Anyone been through Kitimat? To Kitimat, yeah. And that community is located on the unceded Haisla territory. And his parents immigrated from Kitimat, or to Kitimat, from the beautiful Azores Islands of Portugal. So he has Portuguese descent. And with that, Tony, come on up.
Hi, everyone. I was expecting a little better than that. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. As I understand it, people were like really excited about this particular hot lunch, right? Is that my People have been up all night, having trouble sleeping with the anticipation. Anyway, the moment has come. You can now enjoy, relax. So yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you. This is fantastic. I have tried multiple times to come to the hot lunch, and it's always been sold out. So this is my first experience with this, and so it's an interesting way to get a ticket. As mentioned, a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the small town of Kitimat. So just, I'm assuming no one else, I didn't hear a whoop. So no one else. Is anyone else from Northern BC? Okay, we got a few. Okay, at least some. Thank you. So yeah, so it was a wonderful opportunity for me. As mentioned, my parents came from the Azores Islands, what some people don't necessarily think about with Portugal, but it was a fascist dictatorship until the early 1970s. So they lived both in poverty and it came to Canada for economic reasons and ended up, because of their decision, giving me a really lovely middle-class existence. Growing up in what I didn't know at the time was the unceded Haisla territory. And again, growing up, as many of us did in that time, perhaps not appreciating the land, the people, in the way it should be. So that's something that is top of mind for me. And so I appreciate the acknowledgement of the land here today. And just again, just also shout out for those who are interested in people from the Haisla, very cultural impact. Some of you fans of literature may know Eden Robinson, the Trickster series. She is Haisla from Kitimat, as well for the musical side. The Snotty Nose Res Kids, some of you may be familiar. So I know when you look at this space, this is where you want to get your hip hop recommendations. I get it. But so anyway, so after growing up, I went and did my degree, and it took me about a year. I remember this. It was about a year after my last university undergrad final exam until I landed my first position. So it was about a year. Did anyone else have some similar stories where like there was the period of transition? And so that stuck with me, right? Because it's not a fun period, that in between. It's scary, it's highly vulnerable. And I would thought I'd done most things right. But I still had this period of struggle. And it was, you know, though I may not have fully appreciated, I came to discover what I'd been told about how to find work or how careers, what I understood, the best guidance they were given to me was actually not very good and not very helpful. And so that's in a weird way sort of influenced me later on. And again, as mentioned, I've been working in post-secondary in different areas for about 30 years. Almost every job I've had is something I've at some point have said, I would never want to do that. And so there's all the shift and change that happens. So what I'd like to do for my, is it 2 hours? Is just talk about some of the stuff that I've learned about career development. This is something I explored as part of my master's as well, and something I've worked in. So hopefully I'll share it in a way that makes sense to this context. If that's okay. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah, we're still good? Okay, perfect. So usually a good starting place in a university when I talk about career is this question: what is the role of the university, right? Are we here to help students find work? Are we here to develop citizens and personal development? And it's often set up as this either or. And my question, my response is always, why can't it be both, right? All things being equal, when I approach, and I've asked hundreds of students this questions, all things being equal, would you like to use the skills and knowledge you've gained as part of your university experience in opportunities afterwards? I've never had one say no. Everyone says yes. And literally hundreds I've asked this to. Anytime I ask a prof or a dean or university administrator, all things being equal, wouldn't you love the students in your class or your program to be able to use the skills and knowledge they've gained in opportunities afterwards? They all say yes. So we're all in agreement here, but yet there's somehow this strange tension that comes up whenever we bring this up, okay? So this has been something I've been interested in terms of, okay, how do we get ourselves on the same page in this place called the university for this thing that so many of our students, arguably all our students, are actually, is really important to them. So part of it is, I would say there's a lot of messaging, as I mentioned about myself. I got a lot of bad advice. And so I will talk, there's a whole bunch of what I would say career myths that exist that I'd like to challenge. but I'll start with one just because of our limited time today. And this notion of how important it is to know what you're going to do and have a plan, right? When I was going to school, I was told over and over by teachers, parents, concerned relatives that I should know what I should be doing, put a plan in place. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Does someone have this? The importance of knowing what to do, put that plan in place. That is the key to success. Everybody knows this, right? So, okay. So what I'll share some evidence on some stuff that maybe perhaps might question this. So several years ago, Statistics Canada did a study of youth. They started with them at around 15 years old. It was across Canada, and they asked various questions. One of them, name a job you think you might want to do when you're around 30. And then they asked the same question every 2 years with the same group, and then ending at age 25. So I'm going to focus at 17, even though the study started at 15. Because 17 is typically when students are finishing high school and looking at post-secondary and when we start getting really interested in them. Okay, so now little audience participation, which is we're all excited about, I can tell. What percentage of those 25-year-olds were pursuing the same occupational direction that they had identified at 17? What do you think? Somewhere between 0 and 100. Here, what's that? We got a 20%. What else? 50. We got 5. We got 5. We got 20. We got 50. Come on, 5, 20, 50. Anyone else? On none. Oh yeah, sorry, am I off camera? 5, 20, 50. Anyone else? Come on, there's more. 1%. We got 1, 5, 20, 50. 1, 5, 20, 50. 1, 5, 20. 10. 1, 20, 5, 10, 20, 50. 1, 5, 20, 50. 1, 5, 20, 50. 2. We got 2. We got 2 over here. What 2? We got 0. Thank you. I will call it here. We were close. It is actually about 16.5%. Okay, so someone said 15. I think so. Anyway, so 16.5, which is approximately 1 in 6, 25-year-olds are still pursuing the same direction they were at 17. Okay, and I'm going to come clean. I am not a mathematician, but my understanding is that if 1 out of 6 were pursuing the same general direction, that means 5 out of 6 changed. Does that make sense in math? And again, I'm not a mathematician, but is 5 out of 6 much bigger than 1 out of 6? Maybe 5 times bigger, right? So it is the vast, far more people change idea, change direction than those who sustain. But what is the advice we're giving kids at high school, right? When we're talking about coming to UBC, coming to programs, think about what you want to do, find a program that aligns, etc. Right? And I get it. It's complicated to say, do something. You might switch partway through. But when we think of some of the confusion and angst that young people are going to around their future, a lot of that has to do with our messaging. Okay? And again, a lot of this change, there's all sorts of reasons for it. I don't have all sorts of time, but a lot of it has to do with age, stuff that's going on in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Some of it has to do with the fact of what we do here, right? These young people, predominantly young people, are taking courses by some of the smartest people in the world. And these very smart people are creating courses that are designed to question how you see things, challenge your assumptions on stuff, right? Does this make sense? This is what the university experience is like. So one of the outcomes, you start to question things. You start to see the world differently. You start to see yourself in the world differently, right? That is a natural outcome of the process. The challenge is we don't always now provide that support to help students make sense of that. Okay, so, and part of, again, and this change is a normal thing, but change is also complex. Okay, so one of the things I want to highlight, I'm going to do a little experiment. My understanding is it's a university event, so by law you must do an experiment. So I have some props here for this experiment. It's very exciting. Can anyone take a guess of what's inside this container? People said tennis balls. See, you've made assumptions. What have we been told about making assumptions, right? You have to be careful. This time you're right. It is, in fact, tennis balls, yes. So, there. I'm going to start with one tennis ball. I'm going to try and do it over here so I can yell. Can everyone hear me okay? Hopefully you can still hear me on camera. Okay, I'm going to take this one tennis ball, and you see this relatively hard, flat surface that all of us are standing on. My intention is to bounce this tennis ball in such a way that it comes at the general area of my hand so that I can catch it. How many of you feel I can do this? Thank you. Yes. The encouragement is okay. Thank you. Okay, now there's a part 2 of this experiment. So for part 2, I'm going to add 2 additional factors. For the purpose of the experiment, we'll call those additional factors tennis balls. Okay, so I have the exact same ball. Okay, exact same relatively hard flat surface. 2 more balls on top. Now, if I were to bounce the balls, how many of you feel that the bottom ball is going to bounce up in the way that I can catch it? Right? Good. Most of you. Good. The food has gone to your brain. It's not going to come back. Okay, second question. How many of you feel you can confidently predict where that bottom ball is going to end up on the floor? Nobody. Why not? Physics. Yeah, it is physics. Right? So it could be that the speed and angle that I drop the top ball, it's going to impact how it hits the second ball, which will impact the speed and angle that the bottom ball hits the ground. Does that make sense? And I can do the single ball. I could do this over and over again, and we can feel pretty confident it's going to repeat. But I could do this 20 times, and there's a possibility that the ball can end up in 20 different spots. Does that make sense? Okay. Can anyone see an analogy for life of our students that I might be trying to make? How many of our students are only influenced by 2 things in their life? How many of them have an infinite number of things that are influencing their lives that we don't even know about, right? So when we try to say, hey, where am I, what are you going to do something? So this is where you're going to be in 5 years. That assumes a world where life is predictable and we don't have this constant influence. But part of what we're dealing with students are people who are bombarded by stuff all the time as part of their life, and particularly as being students, plus the personal growth and development that's going to happen to them. Okay, so again, this old notion, so any of you who have engaged, who either have adolescent youth in your home or young adults or aunts and uncles of such people who've ever, had these conversations, just to remember, like sometimes when we're asking or the importance of having a plan or having things in place, remember the context of the world that young people are living in. Okay, I'm just going to put these away really quickly. And thank you again for the support of the experiment. Okay, so how do we do this? So there's a lot of ways we can support. So within our office, I'm at the Career Center here at UBC. And the nice thing is there's all sorts of offices and people doing great work all across this campus and at UBCO, so both campuses. But in essence, what we're trying to say is to help students navigate all this complex world, there's 3 main things. We'd like to make sure that part of their university experience, they have what we'd call guided reflection and exploration, right? Some of us can intuitively know how to reflect on things and figure things out and see connections. Most of us don't. Most of us need people and some things in place to help us reflect and see. And then also that now what is possible with this? And again, as someone who came from a small town with immigrant parents, grade 3 educated, I didn't have an imagination. I didn't know what was possible. I needed outside people to help, right? In between. We also need quality experiences. And one of the things we discover in experience, the single biggest factor is the quality of the supervision, right? The better the supervisor, the better the experience can be for students, whether it's a co-op, a work learn, any other type of experience. And finally, this idea of inspiring connections. And these could be instructors, could be any of you, could be alumni, could be employers, but people who inspire our students to act, okay? And that's because it's so much of it is about moving forward. And the last thing I just want to say, because I know it's as I'm wrapping up, is just curious, how many people here have ever driven a car on a foggy day? Okay, seems like most people. Do you drive exactly the same way as you do when it's a clear day? Some people say yes, but avoid them. What do you do differently? Drive more slowly. Make sure you use your lights, right? And you're probably paying a little extra attention, right? You're really gripping that steering wheel. right? And it is true that sometimes fog can be so thick that the smartest thing to do is just pull over and wait, okay? But if you did that all the time in BC, or especially in, you would never drive, right? So as long as you're driving slowly, making sure your lights are on and paying attention, you're able to move forward, correct? And as you continue to drive slowly with your lights, paying attention, you soon are able to see things that were previously obscured in the fog, correct? Can anyone get one final analogy I'm making for our students? Each of our students' lives is a foggy road. For some, that fog is really thick. For some, it's lighter, but it's all foggy because we actually don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know how we as individuals are going to change, but that's okay. As long as we keep committing to moving forward, even if it's slow, right? Just like using lights, take advantage of the resources around us, and there's so many wonderful resources here. And again, just as we're paying attention, again, reflect, pay attention to all of the things we do, school and outside of school. What are we good at, what we're not good at, what we like, what we don't like. All these little bits, we may never have certainty, but that's okay. The key is to have the clarity to just keep moving forward. And with that, I think I'm now done.
Share the mic. So
Okay, yeah.
So first of all, thank you again, Tony. I have to say it was a really interesting speech. You can see the passion that Tony has for his craft and for students. I will say the tennis ball and foggy road analogies are excellent, and I'm going to steal them. Thank you for that. Everybody, you can all steal those.
Well, make sure you credit.
Yeah, exactly. Appropriate credit. And yeah, and as folks are, maybe we'll give 2 minutes just to let a few folks leave just because of the noise, and then we'll pick up with some questions and
yeah, that sounds
perfect.
good.
Sounds good. Skip a minute or two. That's good. Okay, thanks, you guys. We have some questions. Maybe I'll do a couple of questions that were asked of Tony during registration, and then again, throw up your hand, jot something down. If you jot something down, maybe just wave the paper, and we'll come and get it, and we can include those questions as well. So the first question is the UBC Career Center collaborating with the university's Central Human Resource Talent Acquisition? And if so, what strategies for continuing progress to view UBC as BC's top employer would funnel students into full-time roles within the institution? And just a quick, before you answer that, just a quick note that hot lunch is actually recognized as one of the things that make UBC one of the top employers in British Columbia. So yeah, thought I would make that connection there.
Okay. Yeah, so with the question in terms of how we're working with Central HR, we have had some conversations. I would say first and foremost, as career educators, we ethically don't steer anyone anyway. We work with students for opportunities that work best for them. But we've had conversations with Central HR in various ways in terms of some partnership possibilities, in terms of development. We've had, can I say, some nice conversations with our colleagues from Hiring Solutions. In terms of looking at, are there ways to help support, identify particularly those students who've had work-learn experiences on campus as they approach graduation, that they may be interested in some of the opportunities available on campus, particularly those who maybe aren't as represented as well as other groups. So we've had some of those conversations have been occurring. We also fall under the Vice President Students portfolio, and we've been having conversations with our human resources people, because again, one of the things I talked about earlier is the thing that makes a experience the most impactful for students is the quality of the supervision. So we're working with human resources to look at how can we support supervisors of students, because they are both employees, which again, it's good to have a good supervisor employee relationship. But I would argue within a university environment, we have an added responsibility to our student employees in terms of supporting. So we're working within VPS HR to find ways to better support those students.
Great. And I'll just add that I think there's many examples of students that went to school here that changed their career path as a result of going to school here by maybe being an RA. I'm in student housing. They became a resident advisor, saw a career develop in front of them around student services, and have now progressed into student service type roles at UBC, up to including somebody I work with who's a director now that was a student here and never left. So lots of opportunities for students to continue their career paths here. Second question is, how do you see careers shifting in the coming 20 years with the rapid development of AI? Boy, that's a good question. Short answer.
Yeah, I think everything is going to change. But I come from a starting point that everything is always changing, right? Like that career preparation is preparing students and all of us to become, for uncertainty, for a changing world. Like that is the one thing that we know is going to happen. So, but I think what happens with AI, things are going to happen a lot faster. And the reality is we don't know where it's going to go. We know things are going to change, but we don't know exactly how it's going to be. I think in terms of the various people I've heard talk about AI in terms of its impact on opportunities, the ones that I think made the most compelling have been people who've said, it's not that AI is necessarily going to replace jobs or people. It's that people and organizations who are most effectively able to use AI effectively and ethically will have an advantage over those who don't. So I think it'll be more about some who are going to benefit and then others who aren't might fall behind. But it's hard to imagine any sector that's not going to be impacted.
Professionally and ethically.
Yeah.
That's keywords. Question from the floor. What are your thoughts for mature students at UBC?
Yeah, I would say with mature students, I think the principles are the same. And one of the things as we're exploring is whatever you have, honor it, cherish it, and the importance of reflecting. And the fact mature students, you often have more things that you can build on. And we tend to downplay, oh, I've started later, I'm behind, as opposed to focusing on all the stuff that you have that's brought you to this position. One of the things we say with any student, again, whatever stage, and it could be undergrad, grad, younger, mature, is a lot of it is about having a strategy in place. So without going into a full, what this could look like, but generally speaking, it's good to have something to aim towards. Okay, so just looking around, how many people here have a graduate degree, master's or PhD? Okay, for those of you, when you applied to your master's and PhD, did you have to write some kind of letter of intent or some sort of something in order to get in? Yes, most of you. How many of you's thesis or dissertation looks exactly like that initial letter? Most people laugh. I get a few sort ofs, but most people I'd laugh. It's right, but it wasn't a useless exercise, right? It's still useful to have something to aim towards, because then you can put a strategy and you start putting in place. And as you're moving towards stuff, then the road takes you in different directions, right? And so typically when we talk about career exploration, I almost never talk about jobs or occupations. I talk about possibilities. What are the possibilities that you're most curious or interested in? Let's start identifying them. It could be one, it could be multiple, and then put a strategy in place, right? Do some research on it, find out as much as you can. Are there ways to get experience doing stuff, whether it's volunteering, working on campus, associations, etc.? And then also, is there people you can talk to, right? And just keep doing these things. And as you do, reflect. Does it give me insights on more things to keep doing? Has it changed my mind? Put me in a different direction? Again, it's this constant doing, reflecting, adjust, and repeat. And again, whether you're a mature student or a younger student, those same principles I'd say are the same. The nature of the activities may change depending on the person and context, but I'd say that principle is the same.
So you just mentioned working on campus, which leads to the next question. UBC has a very strong work-learn program for students. Maybe folks don't know about it. Can you just sort of talk about what that work-learn program is and the success of it? And I think it's going through a review as well.
Yes.
Share with that.
Yeah. Quick show of hands. How many people are familiar with work-learn? Okay, most. Okay, good. So understand that it's a subsidy program. Individuals or departments on campus can apply for subsidies to hire students. So right now, depending on how you count, somewhere between 3,500, 4,000 students may secure work-learn positions in a given year. What you may not know is there's at least as many who apply to positions who don't actually secure any. which is highly disheartening. So right now we're undergoing a review, because again, primarily it operates as a subsidy program. Obviously, we'd like to see more subsidy, so there's more opportunity, but we also want the quality of it to improve. So again, one of the things we've talked about is the thing that is the most impactful for students is the quality of supervision and ensuring they do some reflection and imagining. So I can imagine that one of the things we'll be looking for more is how to embed these kind of reflective activities, the learning, and how can we support supervisors be better supervisors? Because we know that's a critical part. So these are some of the things that have been surfaced during the review. Some of you may have already been invited or participate. So, but it's a wonderful program, and we're hoping to make it stronger for students as well.
It is a wonderful program. I was part of a bit of a review discussion yesterday, and if you have a chance to be a part of it, please do participate. Talk about how great the program is and how it can be improved, because how it can be improved is ultimately through funding, and the more people recognize it as being a positive program, that funding may come forward. Any questions from the floor? Yes.
As more and more people will have one or more careers and focuses throughout their life, and as jobs become more and more precarious, what kind of advice or how is your advice shifting to students?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think if I can repeat, just those who may have met, is as the likelihood of people going to have, you were saying one or two, and again, many of the predictions are 7, 8, 9, 10, and that people will shift, and there'll be periods of precariousness. I think one of the main things is to be honest with people. I think we do no one a service by saying everything is going to be okay, and then that's it. Like, it'll all work out. Don't worry about it. I think it's important to acknowledge the nature of life is ups and downs. There's wonderful patches, and there's going to be periods that absolutely suck, right? And for some people, those periods are going to be shorter. Some periods, there's going to be longer. We actually don't know, right? But there's this concept of, this is why it's useful, with students. And again, I did this with my own kids. I have 26 and 23. Encourage them to do lots of different things, both engage in school and do a lot of stuff outside of school, right? It's important to be well-rounded, different experiences, different exposures, and put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable, right? The skill of being comfortable with being uncomfortable is actually really critical, right? And I wish I could say, hey, if you do this, 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 everything's going to work out, but that's not the world I live in. So I think it's important to still be optimistic. Hey, as long as you keep doing things, right? Back to the foggy road, right? Keep trying things, take advantage, put things in place to always keep you moving forward. Generally, for most people, things are going to work out, okay? But just know, we don't know, who's going to have stability, right? Look at government workers in the US. They thought that was going to be stable, right? So with the rallies, I think just being honest that we do not live in a world that's highly predictable, to be prepared for uncertainty and know that that's sometimes part of life, and we'll have these periods. But again, if they stay optimistic, if they keep a good social network, all those other good things, and keep moving forwards, for most people, most of the times, things will end up better for them. But we do not live in a world of guarantees. Yeah. I'm not sure if that was a great answer.
That was a great answer.
My takeaway from that, the skills of learning to be uncomfortable is so important. It's almost a form of resilience, but that's learned. That's a learned skill, not necessarily that's something that comes natural. So.
And that's why different experiences are so important, because those resilience and the ups and downs and feeling crappy or like that you failed is really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Another one from the floor. Do you have any statistics on how many times people change jobs, industry fields in their career?
I referenced it slightly earlier. I think it's one of those ones that's really hard, because how do you capture that statistics? But I think the US, I think it was Department of Labor, I think that's what they're called. I think they predicted in the future that I think it was something like people were going to shift, or young people was going to be 8 to 10. So again, but it's a variation, right? Some people will have the one thing for life, but I think the norm, I would say, for most people is there's going to be some shifting, and it could be just shifting within an organization. And for some people, it could be complete industry sector shifts, right? And I think that's going to be increasingly the norm. So again, the resilience, the flexibility, all those sort of core skills, which I think are a central part of being a UBC student, those will adjust and transfer to different environments. But again, this is where it's helpful having lots of different experiences, because the more comfortable you are in different environments, the easier those transitions are.
Little plug for UBC. I've been here a long time. I've had 10 different jobs at UBC, and in fact, 2 different careers ultimately at UBC. Yeah. So the flexibility within one employer having different roles and different careers is quite strong, even here just at UBC.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
And the thing about change, if I can add, is it's often framed as a negative. Like when people move, oh, you study this, and now you're doing this. Oh, that's too bad. There's actually some research from a group of researchers right prior who've come up with what's called the chaos theory of careers. And they found that people who move more often tend to actually report higher levels of satisfaction and also greater income as a side note as well. But it's often, this is like, it's such a bad thing, but generally when people move, it's because they have the opportunity to move, right? Sometimes people move because, oh, something's been taken away and they've had to do it. But the majority of people move and shift because they have the opportunity to.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Well, first of all, I think we all wanted to thank you for this engaging and inspiring speech. And thank you for sharing about yourself. I think it helps us to get to know you better. The question that I have is, I think a lot of us have mentors in life, you know, for some people it's a teacher, for some people it's a parent, grandparent. Who was that person for you, and what was some of the best advice that you gave?
Thank you. So for those who missed, it was about some of the mentors I had. Again, I've been very fortunate.
Me?
Yeah. You know, the day I met Andrew, it all changed. A lot of what I find with some of the best mentors I had is they didn't necessarily act like mentors. I didn't say, hey, you're my mentor. They were people who, by example, were awesome, and I benefited from it. I started off working in the disability field before I got into the sort of career and co-op space. And my first boss was a quadriplegic, Dave Symington, who passed away about a year ago. I've worked here at what was then called the Disability Resource Center. And he was just incredibly generous with his, in terms of giving me opportunity. He was a great listener. And just, whenever I was keen on something, he'd find ways to support. So it wasn't so much things he said, it was how he was and how he made me feel, and the things I felt I could do because I was with him. Later on, I had, people who mentored me or guided me or were inspirations to me on some of the more educational side of things. Like, again, I started working in co-op at SFU, and there was this real push on, it's not just experience, there's like learning that happens here. And there's things we can do that influence the learning. And so that idea that, it was more, the work could be more than what it appears on the surface. And there's always an opportunity to be an educator, always an opportunity to improve the experience of things we do, the quality of things we do, as well as, in any interaction, you can be an educator. So I think when I think of some of the people who had most influence on me, those would be some of the actions and messages that I picked up. And thank you.
Good question. Any other questions from Lori? We have time for about one more or two more. Yes, Henry.
A couple of my students have said they've been having real trouble after graduation.
Yeah.
Getting an interview, and so they worry about their resume and that they have no experience. You talk about reflection on their time here. How would you advise a student to actually, in that cover letter, what should they reflect on and put into that cover letter so that they can actually kind of stand out despite not having enough work experience compared to people who have already been out for years working?
Yeah, thank you. So basically, some practical advice, and this would be primarily for new grads I'm hearing. So, and again, I will always put a plug for, as an institution, we need to do better, right? Like we shouldn't, ideally we're in situations where students aren't graduating going, oh, I haven't had experience or I haven't done this. So again, part of what we're doing, whether it's work, learn, co-op, other opportunities, finding ways to just normalize experience. One of the language we use in our office in terms of good career education is structurally unavoidable, right? We would like, right now, students have to go, if they choose or have the time and ability to go find a career office in whatever faculty, or come find us, or come find someone in co-op, right? Whereas we think it should be structurally part of it so that these questions don't come up as much. That being said, you reflect on the things you've done. What you've done is what you've done. We can't go back and change time. So again, this is encourage students to look at all the things they've done in terms of things from coursework, projects, any volunteering clubs they may have been part of, because they've often done more than they've realized. So helping them mine what they have for those experiences. But then what I would say is, but keep doing stuff, right? Part of your exploration, in addition to applying and having the best resume and cover letter you can have, is all that other stuff I was talking about, right? Continue to go, okay, what are things that I could be doing? Are there places, I might not find work, but can I at least, is there an association I can involve? There's something in my community I can get involved in. Are there people I can go talk to? Do these things in parallel. If you put everything into your resume and cover letter, it wouldn't be the advice I would ever give anyone. It's always about have those good application documents, apply, but keep doing stuff. One of the things I like to say about the importance of doing stuff is the best way to impress another human being is to have them see you be excellent at something, right? So think of the work learn students or co-op students you've hired, right? You could look at them in an application, but because you've worked side by side, that's how oh, this person's awesome. This person's great. And I'm going to try and find opportunities for them or give them advice or this or that. So again, encouraging people to put themselves in situations where they can show their gifts, show themselves being excellent is probably the most important thing they could do, make connections, but then as they're applying, really mine the experiences and things that you've done. Is that okay? Thank you.
So Tony, through his speech and the way he responded to these questions, really showed his passion for his work. One last question, maybe you can share what some passions you have outside of work. What are some of the hobbies you do? How do you stay busy outside of work? Just back to that personal side of things.
Okay.
Toughest question yet.
I thought you were going to talk about my skin regimen. I was prepared for that one. In terms of things I like to do, I am happily married with someone for over 30 years, and I love going somewhere else with her. So next week we're going to Ireland for a couple of weeks, but even just around BC is a real highlight. I'm a nerd. Is anyone familiar with the cryptic crosswords? Okay, is there cryptic crossword nerds? I always keep a stack of Globe and Mail cryptic crosswords if I'm ever going somewhere, I love them. And in terms of physical activity, again, I mentioned I'm from Kitimat, Northern BC. I have a group of friends that I went to high school with, and one of them organizes some weekly tennis outings where we play very poor tennis and spend half the time talking about our aches and injuries, and then having good excuses. So yeah, and I used to cycle a lot. I'm now, my commute is a little further than what I used to, but I do like getting on my bike.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Everybody, please show your appreciation for Tony. Another great hot lunch. Let's also just share our appreciation for the food today. Clarence and the catering team, fantastic as usual. On behalf of the Hot Lunch Committee, thank you everybody for attending. A reminder that the next next Hot Lunch is actually the 26th of March. And it is with Melanie Stewart, who's our relatively new VP of External. So that'll be a really interesting conversation as well. Finally, thanks for those that wore pink shirts. It's important to remember that bullying is bad. And right now we have a big bully in our world. So it's even more important to remember that that's an unacceptable behavior. So thanks for recognizing that. Thanks, everybody.
It's a lot of fun. I think we can hit the road.